Welcome to the View magazine's Rebel Justice podcast. I'm Trystan Kent. Today we're speaking with Sarah Webb, an activist with the climate campaign group Just Stop Oil, whose recent protests have garnered headline attention around the world. Sarah was arrested and jailed for 6 days for her peaceful protests, which included blocking an entrance to Kingsbury Oil Terminal and sitting on top of an oil tanker. Sarah tells us about her experiences, the response, and the need for climate action. Thank you so much for joining us this morning.
Thanks for having me on your show.
Fantastic. No, it's an absolute pleasure. So, I just wanted to start this interview with a quote of yours that I found where you said that this was not something that you wanted to do, but that we have to do it. So I was interested to know a bit more about your political journey on this issue and at what point you decided that you had to get involved.
Well, I hate when I'm quoted to myself. That sounds a bit odd. Yeah, I do feel that. I still feel that. I think we all have a moral duty to step up. And for a long time, I kind of thought, well, I'll just applaud the other people who step up. And I didn't think I could step over that fear boundary into arrest. I was very happy signing petitions and going on a march and waving a flag and applauding other people who were putting their liberty on the line. But I didn't feel I could do it. I think one of the main barriers for me was fear, and fear of particularly losing my job. So I am a special educational needs tutor, so I work with children. And I felt that if I got arrested, that would be the end of that the sky would fall in, basically. If I got arrested, I thought the sky would fall in. And then what happened is I slowly saw other people around me being arrested and the sky didn't fall in for them. So that was a bit of a surprise. And then it just got to a stage where I thought I was being a hypocrite, really, and that we all need to step up. We all need to step up. And a lot of people feel that they have so much fear that they can't get over it and that the sky will fall in if they get arrested. And that's just not really true. So I got courage through seeing other people go through that system by demystifying it for myself and for being around other people who were courageous enough to do that. So with my first arrest, it was really weird because I totally went into the action for the purpose of being arrested. I thought, right, now is the time. I've got to just do this. Because I was so frustrated with myself. I was kind of like eating myself up about just massively frustrated. And I realised that instead of projecting that frustration out, I was really frustrated with myself for not stepping up. So with my first arrest, I got arrested with Extinction Rebellion, and I chained myself to a large pink table in August last year. And I was attached to that thing for 21 hours. It was very uncomfortable. Toileting was into a nappy. This is what everyone wants to know. How do we go to the toilet? It's a very valid question. You're going to have to get used to toileting into a nappy. And it's another one of those things you think, I can't do that. And then you do it and you go, actually, I can. And then I got cut out of that table and taken to, I was lifted. I refused to walk. So I was lifted, put into the back of what they call the pixie vans. So this is a van with 2 cages in the back. And so I was put in one of those. And then I was taken to Charing Cross, I think it was, police station. And I was put in a holding cage in the back of that police station and then processed through the police station, checked in, as I call it. It's kind of like a hotel, but it's not a hotel, obviously. So I was checked in there. And then I think I spent about 8-10 hours in the police cell. And it was really weird. But in that police cell, I just kind of had a moment where I thought, I've been scared of this 2 long years where I held myself back through fear. And I refused to get arrested for 2 years. So I was in that police cell and I thought, so what is it actually like? And I looked around and I thought, it's fine. All my needs are catered for. I was fed. I was watered. I wasn't in there for very long. And it was fine. And I kind of had a moment where I was totally at peace with myself. I was doing enough. And all that frustration disappeared because I just kind of busted the myth.
Yeah, I think I've heard you talk as well that writing to MPs and sending petitions doesn't really achieve much. Had you felt that you'd exhausted all other avenues and this was just, if you wanted to get something done, it was going to have to be placing yourself in a position of getting arrested?
Absolutely. Yeah, I had tried everything. And there's just the realization that the scientists have known this for 40 years now. So what's happening? The government aren't even listening to their own scientists. And we know that the government are not going to budge on this unless we make them. And we, not being some sort of bunch of kind of activists or whatever, but we, the public, the wider public, we all need to step into this. It's no good watching your TV sets, tutting at people, agreeing with them. We hear this so many times. We agree with you. We agree with your cause. I'm putting that in inverted commas there. The cause. Millions of people are dying. Is that a cause? Is that a cause, really? Can you really call that a cause? I think that's disgusting, calling that a cause. So the government are not going to budge unless we force them to. And people say to us, we agree with your sentiment, your cause, whatever they want to call it, right? But we don't agree with your methods. So what would you suggest then? So what would you suggest? Because if you've got a great idea, I'm all ears. I am all ears, because sitting in the road, being arrested, being put in prison is not easy and is not fun. It's not fun times, okay? It is something we endure because we have to. And it's just about busting the myth that the sky will fall in if you get arrested. It's not how it works.
We'll get on to sort of the political context in a second, but just to stay with the sort of the public response for a little bit. So apparently 3/4 of the public do oppose the means of Just Stop Oil and other groups. But at the same time, 3/4 as well are very concerned about climate change and want more done. Is there any way that you'd interpret something like that?
Well, stats can be interpreted however you want them to be. And I think we can put our own bias onto them. I think at the end of the day, it doesn't matter to me personally. It doesn't matter to me whether people agree with me or don't agree with me. I know in my soul, this is the right thing to do. And that is what carries me through. Because people in my own family don't agree with me. And that's really difficult. A lot of activists have this kind of pushback within their own families, and that can be tough. That can be really tough. But you have to just have this resilience. And we have this resilience because we are a community. We really just do hold each other emotionally because we need to, because we're human beings, right? We have our vulnerabilities. We're not invincible. We do not need to be put on pedestals, right? There's nothing special about us as individuals. I'm just a normal person. Right, but I am willing to go to extraordinary lengths and endure extraordinary things because it just simply needs to be done. And I can't sit back and just expect somebody else to do it for me. People say to me, oh, thank you for doing what you're doing for me. No. I'm not doing it on behalf of you. You have to step up. Don't think that you've got a free pass just because you know somebody else is doing it. That's not enough. It is not enough because everybody has the moral duty to step up and push through your own fear barrier, because that's really what's holding most people back. It's not that they don't agree with us or whatever. They're scared for what will happen to them as an individual. Our activists who go out and sit on roads or disrupt the general public, why are they doing that? They're doing that to protect human life. They're doing that to protect humanity and all the other creatures on this earth that are in great, great peril. So they're doing that to protect life. And yet somebody in a car who wants to take their daughter to some precious ballet lesson or whatever, they're saying that the person sitting on the road is the selfish one, that the person sitting there to protect all life on this planet and willing to put themselves out and go to prison and go to get arrested, that they are the selfish ones. Yet the person who wants just to get to a ballet class, I mean, which one is the selfish one? People just see what's directly in front of their face. We've got such short attention spans. Take a step back, look at the wider picture. This is not about us as individuals. This is about us as a collective. And everybody needs to step up.
Do you think that people, as well as being scared of being arrested for their personal liberties, do you think that the issue itself, do people really grapple with it properly, or are people sort of ignoring that, climate change and its impacts a little bit as well?
I think my own personal opinion, I can only ever speak for myself, is that a lot of people are too scared to look, because climate change is an absolute catastrophe and millions of people are suffering right now. Right now, you've got Pakistan, a third of the country's underwater. You've got Somalia on the brink of starvation because of the droughts there. That is what climate change is. You've got massive parts of California, and you've got, if we're talking about like rich countries, talking about massive parts of California that have been burnt to the ground. You've got massive swathes of Australia that have been burnt to the ground, and now they've got floods. This is what climate emergency is. It's not about fluffy polar bears. It's not about, oh, look at the poor butterflies or the insects. It's about what that means to humans. What does it mean for humans? What does it mean for me? And it means that, my greatest fear for as far as climate emergency is concerned, is food, right? So we're talking about climate emergency that's affecting the weather patterns. We all know that already because we can see it on our television screens. These disasters that happen, and weather disasters, right? That equals climate emergency. So how do you grow stuff? How do you grow our food if you can't rely on the weather? So we had 40 degrees this year. In previous years, we've had massive floods. We're just going to have to see what the weather's like during the winter. We've got a massive drought on at the minute. So how are we going to grow our food in this country? Again, bringing it selfishly into what does it mean for me? In this country, we import 50% of our food. So, okay. So say we need to import more because we can't grow it because of our weather. We will be increasingly relying on other countries to sell their food to us. But they are also having the climate emergency and major weather events. And they're also having impact on their crops, right? And we're seeing impact on crops right now, okay? So what's going to happen when they haven't got enough food for their people? Are they going to export it to us? Now, what similar things have happened like this before? Let's look at COVID. So COVID, we needed more personal protective equipment, PPE. And we normally import that. So we tried to import that. And the other countries who normally imported or exported their PPE to this country said, no, we need it for our people. So what's going to happen when we have a squeeze in food production? It doesn't take a genius, does it? What's happened before is likely to be what's happened again. So when other countries are up against it with feeding their own people, are they really going to export it to us? That's my biggest worry. So then what happens in this country if we haven't got enough food to go around? Let's look at before. What happened before? What happened to people in this country when there was a perception that there might possibly be a shortage of toilet roll? People went nuts. And that was just for toilet roll. And that wasn't even a shortage. It became a shortage because people panic buyed. What's going to happen when there's not enough food to go around? It's going to be worse than toilet roll, peoples, isn't it?
Yeah, it's really sort of staggering sometimes just how ill-prepared you suddenly realise that you are, and that it's maddening the lack of lessons being learned from something like that. I was going to ask about your frustration with the political response, with the dialogue from the government and the opposition both seeming to be how much should we punish protesters, and that seems to be where the conversation is firmly gripped with them. And also at the same time, on the ground, Just Stop Oil, Extinction Rebellion have been some of the most successful direct action groups in the last couple of decades, pushing climate to, I think it was one of the top 3 political concerns. So how do you see the political conversation going forwards?
I think with the political situation, just look at this shit show that's there at the minute. Do we really trust the government to get us out of this? I don't know about you. They're untrustworthy. They are untrustworthy. You say to any person in the street, do you trust your MP? No. Do you trust the government? No. The political system is just totally broken. It's totally broken. We expect our MPs and our ministers to lie to us. What sort of society puts up with that? I mean, the government are not here to save us. They've known about this. They've been advised by their own scientists. So David King, the chief scientist advisor to the UK government, who's now retired, said last year, we've got 3 to 4 years to turn this whole ship around. Otherwise, we're fucked. He said, what happens within the next 3 to 4 years will determine the future of humanity. So what does that mean? That means now we've got 2 to 3 years, because he said that last year, right? And what's happened? Nothing. In fact, what's happened is worse, because now the UK government are thinking about opening 130 new fossil fuel licenses for the North Sea. 130 is genocide. It's genocide. That is a death sentence to people around the world. It's a death sentence because it just ties us in to fossil fuels for decades to come. And they say crap like, oh, well, it means we'll have more secure fuel for this country. It won't, because all they're going to do is sell licenses to private companies, and the private companies will sell it to the highest bidder, whether that's France, Germany, or another country. They'll just sell it to the highest bidder. Also, it doesn't help us in the short term, because it's going to take at least 5 to 10 years to get anything out of those oil wells. So it's bollocks, really. Whatever the politicians say, it's just utter bollocks, and we know not to believe it. And that's a sad, sorry state of affairs, isn't it? But that is the reality. And I don't think anyone really trusts the shit show, which is the UK government. And I'm not into politics, like party political stuff, because they're all crap. They're all crap. They all just want to pander to a strapline, make false promises in a manifesto, and then we don't expect them to deliver it anyway. They're untrustworthy. It's a pile of shit, isn't it, really? That's what I think about the political system. Labour ain't no better. They ain't any better. So it's just whoever gets in, they're not coming to save us. We need to put massive pressure on them. And how do we do that? Not by signing petitions, people. Not by having a day march and then going home. Not by waving a flag. You have to disrupt people, because it's the only thing they respond to. It's the only way. And it's really hard to be that person in the road. It's really hard, but it needs to be done. So that's what we have to do.
Yeah. What are your thoughts on the media's response to this? What is the role they're playing there?
The media's role should be to report the news and what is important, right? If the climate emergency and mass suffering of millions of people isn't news, then I don't know what is. So the media baffle me. They baffle me, because instead of reporting on the incredible risk to human life, they'll report on some footballers' wives having a spat in court. It's just like, hang on a minute, that's news. That's news. And then forever, like, I don't know what's going on with the world, but there seems to be more news on the BBC about dogs. Right, dogs, because people have got dogs. The BBC seem to think that, people are interested in news about dogs, so let's do some more dog news, please. What is that about? I don't get it. So any coverage of activism, even if it's the Daily Mail, even if it's like horrific right-wing media that just calls us, I think it was I've been called an eco-zealot, and other people have been called like eco-morons, eco-idiots, all this sort of stuff. Call us what you like. Knock yourself out. It's fine. But you are still reporting it. So thanks very much, Daily Mail. Brilliant. Thanks very much. So as long as they're reporting it, then that's fine by me. But we need more of it, and we need for them to, rather than be forever just reporting the short-term stuff, report that. We don't get away with it. I think a lot of people in the general public think that we get away with breaking the law. We don't. I was in prison in May. We've got at least 7 people in prison right now for the Just Stop Oil campaign, including Michelle Charlesworth, who is serving a 5-month sentence for sitting outside an oil depot. So 5 months in prison for that is utterly disgusting. But this is the government and the judiciary are hand in hand on this, and they would rather imprison peaceful protesters than deal with the problem. And the problem is how to murder the general public.
Yeah, absolutely. So what has been your personal experience getting involved with Just Stop Oil? You have been arrested. How would you sum it up?
Empowering. I was lucky enough to be imprisoned with 7 other women activists who are just incredible. So there are 8 of us. We were locked up 23 hours a day in prison. We had up to an hour outside in the exercise yard. We were prepared. We'd had the training. It was our choice to do that. We knew full well that if we did our action, that is where we would end up. So it's a totally different mindset to other people that find themselves in prison or are put in prison, right? And I accept that. I acknowledge that is my choice. I knowingly went to prison. So that's one thing just to kind of say. And also, it was scary, even though I was prepared and even though it's my choice, it's still scary. And for 3 days, we just all kept our head down. Oh, what's going on? This is all a bit scary. But once we got the lay of the land, we decided we're going to channel the suffragettes here, right? What did the suffragettes do when they got to prison? They resisted. So we thought, right, how are we going to resist? So I think it was on day 4 or 5, we, during exercise outside, we refused to come back in. We sat down, we'd made ourselves little signs. Mine said political prisoner, which is I feel what I was, and they brutalized us. I had 3 guards dragged me, pinned me down, knelt on me, put my hands in arms in arm locks behind my back, and then put what they call a goose hold on me as a pain compliance, where they compress your wrist, and they put that on me. And then they said, you have to comply. I said, no, I'm not going to comply. They said, well, you're going to get hurt then. And I said, I know. And we went through that 3 times. And then they cuffed me behind my back and then carried me back to my cell. All 8 of us were dealt with that way. It was brutal and it hurt because they had cuffs on and then they were carrying you by your arms, so they were pulling against the cuffs. And they used pain compliance as well with the goose hold. That hurt. That really did hurt. But that was intentional by them. Okay, so they will use pain to make you comply. That is what happens, right? That's the brutal truth. And when I got back into my cell, I was like, whoa, okay, right, this is how it is. So the next day, I was out on exercise just with one other activist. They didn't trust us all together, probably a good idea. And then when I come back to my cell, I was like, I'm not having it. So I sat outside my cell as a protest. I made myself another sign saying political prisoner, which I felt I was. And I refused to move. And they locked down the wing, got loads of other officers in, which is their kind of normal way of handling it. And then they said, what are you doing? I said, I am not going to voluntarily lock myself up. I'm a political prisoner. I'm a peaceful protester. And if you, as part of your job, decide that you are going to lock me up, that's up to you. But I'm not going to do it. So they got the governor down to try and talk me round, who said the same thing. And I said, no, I'm not going. I'm not moving. The governor said, but you're affecting other women in the wing. It's not fair on them. And I said, you could just get 2 officers, drag me back 5 foot into the cell. And she said, we don't want to resort to force. Well, that's slightly different from the day before. So even within 24 hours, you can change the mindset of people. It's massively powerful what we do, but we can never really measure it. And I would just say to people within the justice system, or as I call it, the injustice system, is that the judges are massively fickle. There's no consistency. It will depend on the mood of the judge on the day as to how you are dealt with and what your sentence is. For people who work in the prison system and people who work in the police force, I would say you are complicit to the murder of your own children because you are not standing up to what you know is wrong. And if you look back to Germany, in the late 1930s. People knew there and then what was going on, and they chose not to rise up and stand up against it. And look what happened. Are we really just going to sit back now and let this happen? And for me, no, I'm not going to. And that is why I will continue to take action to stop this.
What you're just saying about the cruelty of how the authorities have treated you. I think there was a leader of the opposition, Keir Starmer, yesterday, was talking about how we'd support harsher sentences for protesters because it's putting the public at risk. And when you think about the reality of how yourselves are being placed at such a risk so deliberately, so intentionally, is that sort of the point? Is this all just code for we need to be as cruel as possible to protesters? Is it deterrent, or do they genuinely think that you're posing a risk? What do you think is the explanation for the authorities' response here?
So it's two separate things, I think, like what Keir Starmer says. He just wants to be popular, doesn't he? So he'll say whatever he thinks people want to hear. And he has no power, so I don't care what he says. It's quite telling that Labour listening on this, but whatever. They're not in power, so who cares? As far as like the authorities, is anyone as an individual is a human. Okay, so I've had some police officers and some court officers who've been really kind to me. And I can only, again, speak from my own personal experience. And I've had other officers who have been just horrible. So it's each of them as an individual. And I think sometimes when people have a position of authority or power, then they love to play those little power games with you, don't they? And I just don't bite. They can take things away from me or not give me a phone call because actually that's not my right. Like most people think that if you get arrested, you are entitled to a phone call. You are not. You are not entitled to a phone call. You are entitled to somebody of your choosing being notified that you've been arrested. That you don't really get to talk to anybody. And even when we have said, yes, we'd like this one number, which is kind of like our support system, to be notified, they haven't been notified. So this is sometimes, but it will depend on the mood of the custody sergeant on the day. And this is the injustice system that I was kind of referring to. Like if you're up in front of a judge, if you're up in front of a judge who doesn't like activists or loves fossil fuel or something like that, then you're going to get treated more harshly. If the judge has not had a nice lunch that day, you're going to get judged more harshly in the afternoon. If it's late in the afternoon, woe betide you, because they want to go home. So this is the justice system. And I look about when I had my first arrest, there were 8 of us who did exactly the same thing. We were all chained to this massive pink table for Extinction Rebellion. We all did exactly the same thing. We were all hooked onto that thing for 21 hours. We all got arrested. 6 people out of that 8 were released under investigation and no further action was taken. And their cases were not pursued because of lack of evidence. We were locked onto that thing for 21 hours. That doesn't make any logical sense. So that was 6 of us. One person was found guilty. And I think, although I'm not 100% sure, I think they were given a conditional discharge or maybe a suspended sentence. And I can't remember which, but they were found guilty and, had consequences to that. And the last person went to trial and was acquitted, found not guilty. But we all did the same thing. So you expect the justice system to be consistent. It is not. And the scales kind of like fall from your eyes when you know these things. Like I always thought, I've got some police officers who are personal friends of mine, right? They're good people. They are good people. Some people in the police force are good people, but you see the injustice and the way some police officers treat people, and you just go, oh, no, they're a bad apple there. So I've got some complaints outstanding with the police force as well over, police officers verbally abusing me, dragging me around the streets and within the police station as well, dragging me around the police station. So I said, okay, it's all on video. They've got CCTV. They can't find it. That's convenient, isn't it? So, that is my experience of the injustice system. It is just that.
Wow, it's really shocking when you describe just how much, I don't know whether you'd call it discretion, maybe in terms of the powers being abused or used or abused. But when you think of justice, as just the word itself should imply a sort of some measure of fairness. And to think that you can have that level of inconsistency in a system that's been surely designed to try and be fair is just really, really shocking. I know that you described some really, really awful experiences there, really, really difficult experiences, and you have put yourself and your liberty at risk, which is really, really brave in my opinion. I'm sure a lot of people would think the same thing. But with our listeners listening now who are also maybe concerned about the climate, what would be your message to them? What do you think needs to be done next? What would you say to them?
You need to go to the Just Stop Oil website. It's juststopoil.org. And it's okay to be scared. I'm still scared now, but we are a community of resistance, and there is power in that. And for large parts of my life, I felt powerless, ignored, belittled as a woman. And this has shown me how much power we have as individuals. And I'm not on some massive ego trip here. I'm just saying that if you think that what you do doesn't matter and one person doesn't matter, you're wrong. We all have a moral duty to step up into this, and we have to do it. So it's okay to be scared, and together we will push through those fears. But we can only do it if we're together. I'm terrified if I know I'm on my own. I can only do this in community. So go to the juststopoil.org website and go to an online meeting there and join us, because we need you. We need everybody.
I imagine that must be really empowering to know that you can kind of bandy with other people and to take on something as big as global climate change.
Yeah, we don't have all the answers. We're here to raise the alarm and to force the government into action. All the answers are there, but that's not our job. Our job is to raise the alarm and apply pressure, and we're doing it.
Sarah Webb, thank you so much for coming on the Rebel Justice podcast and talking about your experiences. It's been fantastic to speak to you, and wish you all the very best with the future.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Rebel Justice podcast. This is part of our series on the Just Stop Oil protesters. If you'd like to hear more, you can listen to our previous interview with Just Stop Oil campaigner Zoe Cohen. For more in-depth articles and features, you can head to our online magazine at theviewmag.org.uk, or get the latest by following us on Twitter at rebel_justice, or our Instagram at _the_view_magazines.